I would like to briefly address the question of whether what we're doing by gathering and singing psalms at City Hall is a religious action or a civic action. Are we defending civil liberties, or are we defending religious liberties? I actually believe that the two are intertwined at a very important point. So just to back up a little bit, there was an emergency mandate. The mayor basically gave himself emergency powers in February or March. And then the city council extended his emergency order, which he was able to do under the authority of the emergency powers that were added, that were given to him early on in the pandemic. And then they extended it again. So the complaint, early in the pandemic, we were concerned about our religious liberties, whether they would allow us to worship, and we did go against the mandate by worshiping in person at Christ Church. Now, one could say, well, they're not enforcing it. And there is a sense in the interim, during an emergency period, where as long as they weren't enforcing it, we were kind of holding our breath and seeing. What happened this last Monday is that they extended it at a time where there is absolutely no justification and without any qualification for how it would end. In other words, they extended it to January 6th in the context of 0 deaths, 0 hospitalizations since the beginning of the pandemic in Latah County. I actually heard there was 1 death that wasn't registered at Latah County because he died after being transported, and he was 101 years old. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. It's very sad, but this is not a pandemic. Not in Latah County. In other words, I'm not speaking for the whole nation. I'm talking about the context of Latah County in Moscow, Idaho. So it was extended without any kind of metrics for how it would end. In other words, is this the new normal? And the new normal reserves the right of the police to enforce a law that would disrupt normal worship of God's people. And so what are we doing with the flash psalm sing? We're pressing the point. We are, they reserve the right to come and arrest us on Sunday morning. And so we're saying we're going to sing, flash psalm sing, 3 hymns in the doxology at City Hall. So there is a civic action aspect. This is attracting the attention of people who may not be Christians, but are interested in their protecting their civil liberties. And that's a valuable thing on its own right. But it is also religious because we are pressing the point. They said we have the right to dictate how you worship, where you worship, how far apart you can be from each other. And we're saying, no, you don't have that right, especially given the abuse of power that you're displaying, especially given that you are extending it to the point where this is just, now you're directly interfering with the worship of God's people in an unwarranted way. So there were people early on who were not happy with it, even in the midst of a pandemic, and I tend to sympathize that side. But now we're at a point where any person looking at the data, any person looking at the facts, and looking at it from a religious freedom perspective, there's no end to this mandate at this point. It's pushed out to January 6th with no metrics for how it would end. I gave the example recently to someone, if they had said, if we have 100 hospitalizations, which if we reach 10 hospitalizations, it's no longer an emergency mandate, it goes away. That's something to work with. It's something to define the nature of an emergency. You can't go below 0. And so there simply is no emergency. There's no justification for that. And therefore, it is, I hope, clearly for everyone crossing a line. And that's why I'm obviously calling on the mayor to remove the emergency order. He would be the proper authority to do that. But then if he doesn't, I'm calling upon the police chief, either refuse to arrest people for this unlawful, this wrongful, this evil mandate, or resign. Deputies, police officers, refuse to enforce this order or resign. This is what you need to do. It's very hard. I understand you are being asked to just do your job. You're being asked to fulfill a lawful, as in legal, order. But you may not Not if you're following your conscience. You know it's wrong. I could see it in your eyes as you were arresting your fellow citizens who have backed you, who have wanted good for you during all of the protests and all of the anti-cop police. These are the citizenry of Moscow who have your back more than anyone else. And we still do. And that's why we're calling on you to disobey these orders or resign. Resign. You will be blessed. If you will be taken care of. Have the courage to resign if that's what you need to do. So I'm going to be at City Hall, in front of City Hall, singing the Psalms in just a few hours. Please come join me. Leave the mask at home. Bring a cantus, or we'll have song sheets. Come sing with us.